العين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغه مدحته القائلون ولا يعصي نعماه العادون ولا يودي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خير المبشرين والمنذرين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين أما بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dearest Mu'mineen, Mu'minat, friends, brothers, sisters, it is my honor once again to have this opportunity to talk to you, the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, the followers of the Deen al-Haq, the ones who are waiting for our holy Imam, and the ones who are the mourners of Imam Hussein and the martyrs of Karbala. Today we're talking about, yesterday we discussed a little bit about some principles of modesty, and the idea was that modesty is not itself something that we enforce, rather it is something that is affected by a cause, and that cause is aql, it is intellect, and therefore if we focus on intellect, modesty will automatically follow with it. We do find that enforcing people to dress a certain way and be a certain way, it is not as effective as when it comes from the inside. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has indeed created everyone in pairs, and you know, it is said that He is the one who, He is the one who has created everything in opposites to know that it has no opposite, and created everything in pairs to know that He has no pair. So He has no pair, He has no opposite, and the pairs that we have, you know, He created these, right? So سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. So He has created everything in pairs, and there is a beauty in those pairs, and there is an attraction in those pairs. And the purpose of modesty is to make sure that that attraction is only amongst pairs and not becoming some kind of a universal commodity. So in that sense, the problem with the challenge of modesty is, number one, other cultures. And that'll link maybe a little bit to our topic today on community. And the second challenge is also the misrepresentation of freedom to make it seem like immodesty is freedom somehow. So what we did was so the idea is that how does immodesty become freedom? And that is, I think, the question that we have to ask ourselves and answer. Moving on to what we're talking about today, and the first thing is financial management in Islam. And again, I will take a slightly different approach to what I suppose would be the traditional approach, and I'm guessing you've gotten used to that by now with me. I tend to take not the traditional approach, in the sense that, I mean, my approach is traditional. I don't want to seem non-traditional, but I'm not here to tell you what to buy and what not to buy, and what to spend your money on and what not to spend your money on. What I want to talk more about is the principles of finance and management in Islam. And we should begin from the beginning, and the question is, why is there even money? Why is there barter? Why is there trade? And why is that happening over here? And when we look at, for example, the first two human beings, Adam alayhi salam and Hawa Salamullah alayha, and when we look at them, they're walking in Jannah. You know, I think that tale is told in the Quran so many times, and it's fascinating on so many levels. And what you have is, you have a prophet, and this prophet is being told, go and live in heaven. Now, Adam alayhi salam, when he is removed from heaven and he comes to the earth, he cries every day, and he does tawbah, and he is crying, and he's asking his Lord to forgive him. And it is said that at that time, he's so emotional and so sad and involved in this tragedy of this mistake that was made. And so therefore, he doesn't know how to console himself. It is said that, and in Al-Bihar, you'll find this, it is said there is a angel that Allah sends to the earth to go and console Adam alayhi salam. And the angel comes and says, this is the same angel actually that will become Hajar-e-Aswad, basically. So right now, what is Hajar-e-Aswad, that stone we see over there, that is the angel. So in the beginning, it's an angel. It comes to Adam alayhi salam and says that, why are you so sad? And he says, because of my mistake, now I'm on the earth and I want my Lord to forgive me, so that is why I cry every day. He says, your Lord forgives you, but he also says to you that you should know that he created you for the earth. Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifa. So he made you for the earth. This was your destiny. You were to come here in some form or some way or another. This was meant to happen. But when you look at him in heaven, and he's there with his wife, and they're both in heaven, at that time, how did they get into heaven? Because a big part of our journey is we want to get back there. So we want to return to heaven, in a sense, that we were there and now we're returning, or we want to go there, however you want to take it. But when we want to return to heaven, how did they get to heaven? What are we doing to get to heaven, and how did they get to heaven? Now we have to spend our whole life giving tests. This world is a big test. We have to do what is right and not do what is wrong. We have to obey the laws of Allah. We have to make sure that we do at least less sinning than we do good, and hopefully no sinning at all, and so on. So there's a lot of effort that we're putting in. What effort did Adam alayhi salam and his wife do when they entered into Jannah for the first time? What was the effort? How many salah had he prayed? How many hajj had he done? How much zakat had he given? What had he actually done? And when you look at the Quran, what you find is one answer, and that is that وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. He was taught the names. ثُمَّ عَرْضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ. The malaika was shown the names, and then he said, Ya Adamu أَنْبِئُنِي بِأَسْمَائِهِمْ. And so what happens is Hazrat Adam teaches the angels about the names that he sees over there. And many of our tafsir, it is said, it is the names of the first 5 ma'sumin, with the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to Amirul Mu'mineen, to Sayyida Salamullah alaiha, to the Hasnain, the holy princes of Jannah. So these are the 5 names that Adam is seeing. He says them and he enters into heaven. So how hard was that? In the sense that it was pretty straightforward, one step and now you're in heaven, and now you're in heaven and you don't have any farming that you have to do. You don't have to worry about buying things, selling things, managing your finances, doing anything. All you have to do is enjoy yourself, walk around, eat what you like, go where you like, roam the gardens. And then what happens is we see that there is this minor error that occurs, and now he comes to earth, and on earth everything is different now. Now on earth what happens is we see that Habil and Qabil are being asked to give sacrifices. And now what happens is they are farming or they are shepherding, and now from their crops they have to give some sacrifice. And we see Habil, he is giving the best of his crops as sacrifice, and we see Qabil is giving the useless, expired, doesn't want in the corner, just lying there hay as sacrifice. So now we already see that a system is occurring. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the second generation of human beings, is already setting up an economic system. And the system is such that we have to be able to receive goods and give them on. There is a narration that says that anybody who wakes up for Salatul Fajr, that is the one who receives rizq directly. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala distributes the rizq through his hujjah. So Al-Imam Ajjallahu Farajahum is responsible for that, distributing the rizq to the universe, every single person getting what they need to get in terms of food and money and shelter, etc., and health and life and blessings. And this is all happening through a pattern. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not doing it directly, rather his representative does it. And then from his representative you can see that whoever is waking up for Salatul Fajr, the hadith says, is getting rizq directly now. What happens to the one who misses it and skips it? They're getting risk indirectly through the ones who got the risk at Salatul Fajr. So there is a distribution system here, and that distribution system is essential to understand the principles of economics in Islam. That means that it did not have to be that all of us, are going to receive risk from another person. Whether we're receiving it, maybe it's pocket money from parents, that is, in a way, it is still part of that economic distribution. Whether we are working and we have a job and we're receiving money, it is all coming from one source. Now, I have a job in which I go and teach, and there's a college, and I get a paycheck from them. Sometimes what happens is, when I'm talking with my colleagues and there's some kind of office politics going on, which is essential in office, you gotta have some politics. And I tend not to care about the politics, and I ignore all of it, and I never go and, butter up the boss, so to speak. I'm always just very straightforward and blunt. I don't waste any time. I go to my class, teach my class, and leave. I never talk to anybody, never see anybody, don't care. And there's other people who are always playing the political moves. Somehow they think it's gonna help them. And then sometimes, in these situations, they ask me, like, what's your problem? Like, why don't you do this, or why don't you care, or what is it? And I say, I don't work for them. And he's like, yes, you do. You work for them. They hired you. I said, no, I don't. I work for my imam. My imam will get me risk in any way, whether it's from here. If he's getting me risk from here, then that's good for them. It's not good for me. I'm going to get what I'm going to get anyway. But if you get to be the wasila, if you get to be the means to give me risk, that's your honor. It's not mine. I don't mind. I'll go get it from somewhere else. So the point being that you have a central distribution point, and from here it needs to trickle on. So Amir al-Mu'mineen salatu wassalamu alayhi says that I have never seen hunger, or I've never seen a hungry one without seeing someone that has too much. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is distributing risk for everybody. There is enough. Sometimes people like you to think that, the earth is too small, we're too many population, there's not enough room. I mean, seriously? I just came from Ajax to here, and my GPS took me off the highway. I guess there was too much traffic. I don't know. I just came through land and land and land, and all I saw was green for kilometers. And Canada is, how much of Canada is really populated? There is an idea of the corporations right now that are trying to control the world, and in many ways are, that we have to scare people. There's not enough food, there's not enough land. This is against the basic principle of a creator, the one who is responsible for giving everybody risk. So what happens is, once we start to see that there is a distribution pattern, we start to see where it is coming from. And once we realize where it is coming from, now the question becomes, what do we do with it? And there is one situation where you become like a dam. The one that blocks water. And so now what happens is the water comes, or the risk comes, and it stays there. It keeps on collecting there. It's not going forward. That in itself is a hindrance to more risk coming this way, because this means if the wealth moves forward, then more will come in. The avenue is going to get blocked. So we see some people, they have so much risk, and they're giving so much away, and more is coming. They don't know what to do with it. So there's a man, and he's at the time of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what you see is that he comes to the Prophet with the weirdest complaint. And the complaint is that, dear Messenger, can you please pray that I get less wealth? And the Messenger says, you want less wealth? He says, yes, I want less wealth. There's too much. I don't know what to do with it. I try to give it away. I buy everything I need. And even then, there's too much. So is there any way we can kind of decrease this a bit so that, some of my challenges are not there anymore? Who would not want wealth? And if you have a bank account and it's filling up with numbers, then who doesn't mind that? But you see the mindset here. The mindset here of this man is different. It's not a typical mindset. That means over here what you have is, you have somebody who's saying that he's understanding the burden of the wealth. It comes with a burden. So in another narration, you see that the Holy Messenger, he gives some money, same amount of money to Salman al-Muhammadi, and he gives some money to Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. And he gives them the same amount of money and says, go, spend the day and come back to me at the end. They go and spend their day with their wealth that they got. And when they come back, both of them are before the Holy Messenger, and he looks at them and he says, tell me now, First he prepares like some kind of a hot pan. And he says, I want you to stand on this. So the pan's a little hot. And he tells, Hazrat Abu Dhar, he says, stand on this. When he stands on this, he says, okay, now tell me what you did with the money. And he starts to recite it. He starts to recount. He says, well, I spent a dirham there. I spent a dinar there. I bought this. I bought that. And now the feet are starting to burn. So his feet start feeling hot. So he tries to quickly go through his accounts, and then he jumps off. And then the Prophet says, okay, Salman, your turn. Salman, he comes and stands. He stands on there. He says, I bought a loaf of bread and I gave the rest to the poor. And then he gets off. And then as he gets off, we see the lesson that is over here. There is, the more money that comes in, the more accountable we are for it, the more responsibility we have. So now, if you look at the mindset of the man who is complaining to the Prophet that, I have too much wealth, is there any way you can kind of decrease this a bit? So the Holy Messenger looks at him and says, I will not do a dua for you to decrease your wealth. I can tell you a way you can decrease your wealth. And he says, what should I do? He says, drop food when you eat it. The Holy Prophet tells him, just drop food when you eat it and eat while you're standing. So this is a great way to decrease one's wealth. It happens to be the norm of our society now. It's almost, I've gotten tired of telling people, they don't listen to, I don't know, but they'll be eating there, eating standing, and I guess maybe they're still getting enough wealth despite that, so maybe we need a little more decrease to learn the lesson. But the idea is that eating standing, eating while you're walking, and dropping your food, this automatically decreases the risk. So what happens is this man says, oh, okay, that's easy. I'll just walk around and eat. Then I'll decrease in my wealth. He says, perfect. And now what happens is he's walking around eating, and then he does that for a week, and he comes back to the Holy Messenger and says, nothing happened. In fact, I'm getting more money. What's going on? I was supposed to get less money. I haven't eaten sitting down in a whole week. Every day, 3 times a day, I'm walking around and eating. The Holy Messenger says, okay, tell me how you were eating. So he says, well, as I'm walking, I have one hand and I hold up my shirt like this, and then I eat. So that he says, why do you do that? Well, so that the crumbs drop in the shirt. The Prophet says, why didn't you let the crumbs drop on the floor? He says, I can't do that. This is Allah's risk. He says, then how are you going to get a decrease in your risk? You have to disrespect it first. So the idea is that, there's a respect that comes with it. There's a knowledge that it is not coming from your boss, it's coming from your imam, which is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we start to appreciate it. Then the next question becomes, how do we manage this, right? And where do we spend it? So of course, you have your rights, but understanding that the money that is given to you, number one, for your basic needs. Basic clothing, food, shelter, a respectable life, transportation, and whatever else we need. Then what happens is we notice that there's a little increase. Now, when we don't have enough time and we don't have enough money, you'll notice that we tend not to think about worldly things as much. We're always on the run. We're always on the go. It's only when, I have a little extra time on my hands. Like, give me one weekend where I don't have these obligations of going somewhere for majalis, for going somewhere for some kind of a religious duty, if I actually just have a weekend, then I start thinking of ridiculous things like, maybe we need to build something here. Maybe we need to buy something. I start thinking about building and buying things. When I don't have time, then I'm not thinking about it. When I'm always in negative in my account, then I don't have time to actually think about, okay, what should I buy for myself now? It's only when I start to get abundance. The abundance, in a way, is a test that is very severe. So Amir al-Mu'mineen salatu wassalamu alayhi says that my believer should be ready for poverty in a sense. He says that Allah has left the wealth for the others and has left knowledge for the ones who believe in Him. So knowledge is our true wealth, but that doesn't mean that if somebody gets wealth, it means they're a disbeliever. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given wealth to many great figures who we knew were very important in religion and who were able to distribute that wealth as well. But also what happens is sometimes we start to judge. So what we do is when we have hardship, we start thinking, Allah, does not love us anymore and we've done something wrong. When life is full of ease, we actually start thinking that, oh, this means that Allah must love this one very much. We see a brother who is not doing well in life and we think they must be punished for something, and we see someone doing very well and we think they must be being rewarded for something. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's judgment and justice is far more complex than that. He has made us all different in terms of wealth, but there's a reason for that. You know, it's said that, and I was mentioning this a little bit maybe the other day, where Adam alayhi salam is looking upon the offspring as they are taken out from his loins, and he puts them out. And as we mentioned in chapter 7 verse 172, where it says that am I not your Lord? The interesting thing is that Adam alayhi salam looks at each of those particles and he says something to Allah. He says, you know, Allah, I'm looking at these particles, who are they? And Allah says, they are your offspring, Adam, till the day of judgment. He says, these are all going to come from me. He says, yes, over the generations till the day of judgment, these are all the children. So you can imagine how many there were. There would have been billions, billions. And he looks at each of them, and Adam alayhi salam, of course, intellect is at peak. He's a prophet. The intellect of a prophet is supposed to be equal to all of his ummah together. So all of the ummah together's intellect, the Prophet's intellect will be greater. This is how Allah distributes justice, because the one who's going to lead them needs to have greater intellect. So this Prophet of great intellect looks at them and says, you know, I noticed that some are brighter than others. Some are smaller, some are dimmer, some are larger. And then Adam says something very, very insightful. He says, oh Allah, I think that my offspring will fight each other because they have not been given equal. What is the difference here? And Adam is told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, oh Adam, I know my offspring better, I know my creation better than you. And I know which of my creation will come towards me when I give them wealth, which will come towards me when I give them poverty, which will come towards me in health, which will come towards me in sickness. So what you see is now any increase or decrease in wealth, in health, in sickness, in hardship, in difficulty, it's all test. It's all test. That means that the more wealth I'm getting, the bigger my test is. So that is, you know, that is the principle. Sometimes we might think everything's going our way and it's not necessarily a good thing. There's a very, very interesting incident that occurs at the Prophet's time as well, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what happens is there's this man. He comes to the Holy Messenger one day and says, I'd like to invite you to my house for breakfast. Is there any day where after Salatul Fajr you can come to my home? And he lives in Medina. So the Prophet says, yes, I'll come. And the day is set. And then after Fajr, we see that the Holy Messenger, along with some companions, a small group, they go to this person's house. Now when they go to the person's house, what happens is they all sit down. And he says, I'll go and get some food. I'm getting everything ready. And he goes off. And he's a wealthy person. Now what happens is he walks in to get food. As he's coming out, he's balancing out a lot of things and a lot of different things in his hands, and he happens to have some eggs as well. And one of the eggs falls out of his hand. So of course, everybody's looking fascinated, you know. There's a certain fascination with when someone's doing something, we all tend to look at it. I notice a lot when I'm sitting in a place like this and I'm talking on the mic, I've got everybody's attention. Now somebody comes and starts fiddling with a wire, somebody comes to fix something, put water, everybody's attention turns to this one in fascination. Like, what is this one going to do? He turned on a button. And so in the same way, they're all looking and they're fascinated. And you know how things go in slow-mo. So I'm assuming now the egg is falling in slow motion. That's what I'm imagining. And as it falls, they're waiting for it to crash. There happens to be from the ground a little dead tree shrub sticking out with two twigs that are shaped like a V. And they see the egg comes and lodges right into there. And then he looks down and everybody's astounded. And he looks at them and he smiles and he says, don't worry, this happens to me all the time. I've never had any loss of any kind, no misfortune, no bad luck. Nothing bad has ever happened to me. And he picks it up and he puts it here. I've never gone through any hardship, never gone through any difficulty, any sickness, any misfortune, any loss of something, any loss of profits from my business. At that time, the Holy Messenger stands up and says, I must go. And the companions get up too, and they start leaving, and they're going out the door. The man is astounded. He looks at them and says, why are you leaving? What happened? Did I say something wrong? The Holy Messenger says to him that it is not allowed for a prophet to stay in that place where there is the adhab of Allah, where there is the punishment of Allah coming upon that place, an adhab. And he says, what do you mean? He says, the Prophet says, you just told me that you've never gone through any test, tribulation, any hardship, any difficulty, any challenge, any loss. He says, yes, never. He says, that means Allah has not tested you. And if Allah has not tested you, that means He has turned His face away from you. Now you need to ask in repentance. So, do you see how sometimes what we think is good fortune and blessings is not necessarily, and sometimes it's the opposite? And with that we realize that money itself and wealth now becomes a test. And so I have my roof, I have my food, I have clothing, I can support my children, my family. Now I'm getting more wealth. Now I know what to do with it. Yes?
This might be a silly question, but does this mean that we can't enjoy our wealth or enjoy our good fortune that comes our way?
Absolutely you can. And you're supposed to enjoy good fortune that comes your way. So what happens now is, how are we deciding we're going to enjoy it, number one. Number two, is there any part of that we're distributing to someone else, right? So that means you save up money and you go on vacation. You have a nice car that you want to buy, you buy that car. There's a nice home you want to get, you get that home. Now you've got a home, you've got a car. Now you want a second, okay, then a third. But what's the limit? We know people who have like over 100 cars. They have homes in every major city, and they don't even have time to go there, right? So it's absolutely not that you don't enjoy yourselves. The Quran says that this has all been created for you. It says you should travel the land, you should see Allah's blessings, you should enjoy Allah's bounties. Absolutely. So what I'm doing is that not limiting myself in that enjoyment, but also when I have some left over, I'm looking to my right and my left. Is my brother okay? Is my sister okay? Are my parents okay? Is there anybody in my faith, in my community that needs some help? So what happens is, as long as we're also helping, along with helping ourselves, along with enjoying, but with a balance, And I think that there is an inherent sense in us to know when I have overdone it, like how big does my TV need to be? How many garage doors do I actually need? How big does my garden need to be? How many times a year do I have to go and visit my favorite vacation spots and so on? So it at the end, there's a narration and a verse in the Quran, and it's a long incident, and I'll just summarize. I'll skip over the verse and the narration, but the summary is that there's a man, and he's standing in front of one of our holy imams alayhi salam, and he's asking about what is Allah going to ask about on the day of judgment, because it says that He will be asking about the bounties. And so do I have to account for the food I've eaten, for example? And the imam says that you're a guest on this earth, you're Allah's guest. And he says yes. And he says, if a guest comes to your house and eats, then when he leaves, are you going to stop him at the doorway and ask him, how many cucumbers did you have? How much bread did you have? So the idea of us being stopped at heaven for an account is for a blessing, but it's not for these worldly blessings. It's for the vilaya of the Masumin. That is the blessing that we'll be asked about. So that is the one thing that we have to always cherish and always be thankful for. So I'm very glad you asked that question, because sometimes what happens is when you're giving a message, it seems like it's coming across from one extreme. But absolutely not. That's not what we mean at all. What we mean is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you this life, and there's absolutely no harm in enjoying it. There's absolutely no harm. At the same time, making sure that if there's other needy people around you, they are helped out. And you will know. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says that when Allah wants to give mercy to one of his people, one of his creation, then He sends someone to you in need. So what will happen is that's Allah's mercy. So when someone comes to you in need, I need some help. It might be wealth, it might be they need your time, it might be some ability that you have that you can help them with, so that we're always helping. And what that does is that starts to create a community identity, because if we want to reform our community, first of all, we need to realize our community. And this is a great example of that. Here, what we have is a community that is coming together to commemorate events, to talk about things, to worship together. And this is a community. When you look at a community, what you see is that a community is a group of people that have something in common. Now, what you need to do is realize that you're going to have many communities. Maybe some of you, I don't know, I haven't watched sports in 20 years, but I used to be a great fan of sports. And so if you, maybe you're a fan of the Toronto Raptors, for example, or the Maple Leafs, or whatever other team there is. Now, I've seen people, young ones, fascinated by TV. Now, I was the same way 20 years ago, but then, I don't know, I got disappointed with sports and I just stopped watching it as a protest, and I kept on going with that. But I've seen some of my young ones, and they'll be watching TV, and when the team wins, they're so happy. And that I found very interesting, because why are you so happy that the Toronto whatever team won? And they're like, because they're my team. Okay, but do you know any of them? No, I don't. Have you ever met any? No, I haven't. If you met them, do you think you'd be good friends? Do you think you guys would get along, like you'd bond together, like they have certain qualities you like? No, probably not. Then what is it? Why are you so emotionally attached to them? Because it's my team. What do you mean it's your team? It's my city. So because you identify with Toronto as your city, now whatever team is attached to that becomes an emotional and a passionate thing for you. So I don't mean for everybody, I just mean general as an example. And so what happens is, when you have something in common, that is going to make your team. Sayyida Salamullah alayha, the holy daughter of the holy messenger, says something in when she goes to fight for her rights, when they take fadak away from her. And one sentence she says is that our vilaya was made incumbent upon you so that you would be united. That means that we all want unity in the world, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has only created one means of unity. And that one means of unity is their leadership. The leadership of our holy Imam, Ajjallahu Farajham, the Wilaya of the Ma'asumeen. This is what will bind us. So that tells you that as a community, that needs to be our common binding. And that needs to change our perspective. Now, when I look at anybody who is from my community, I should not be thinking anything but this is a follower of the Ahlul Bayt. This is somebody who is a worshipper of Allah. This is someone who is a lover of our Imam. And so what happens is, this one likes me too. And so what happens is you end up changing the way you're looking at people, right? So now, here's a brother in faith. Here's a sister in faith. And this kind of communication, this kind of perception changes things. So now when we meet each other, it's under that umbrella. Now what happens is you go to school, maybe a slightly different community depending on where you're studying. You go to work, slightly different community. Maybe there's a team you play with, and there's other people from there. So you're mingling in different communities. But what you need to do is you have a central community. And then from this, we now have branches. So we go to those branches, but we always come back to our center. That becomes important. So this place is a center, and this becomes a center where we have opportunities to meet. So what we do is we increase the ways in which we are meeting each other and the reasons for which we are meeting each other. We're meeting each other to eat together, to play together, sports together, arts together, religious activities together. And then what we start to feel is we start to feel more of a union, more of a binding. And now our relations get stronger. These relations turn into blood relations. These relations turn into marriage relations. These relations turn into family relations. And we continue to build as a community. There are some communities I find that are very good at giving their culture to the next generation. Sikhs are like that. Every Sikh I know will know their mother tongue. They'll know their Punjabi. And most of them will probably be wearing their turbans and their long beards and whatever else they do. Like they implement that into their children. I notice it happens more with communities the more minority they are. the more they find they have to defend their faith, the more protected they need to be, the more united they'll be. With Shia, I find it can vary a little bit depending on country and geography. I can speak for Pakistani Shias. I can tell you that when people are killing us, we're very united. As soon as they stop, then we just start fighting each other. So the fact, I think one of the reasons why our faith stays strong is because we have been persecuted and killed for centuries, and we have been pushed from Medina towards, the rest of Arabia, towards Indo-Pak, and then into the rest of the world. And so what you have is, if you look at those people that are called Ahmadis, Qadianis, they have membership cards. They're a very small sect of Islam, cult. I don't want to say anything right now, but they are what they are. But they have their own membership, and they have cards. And there's another group that is maybe more in Pakistan. They're called Al-Khanis. They're very united, business-wise, very united. They support each other. They all help each other. When you, is it the Bohris or who is it that if you go to any country, you can find someone from your own faith and connect with them. You'll have a place to live. They'll have somebody to show you around town. So the idea of community, I think that, and like, I don't know, Iraq is an incredible place, and if you go there for Arba'een, you see how united everybody. It's a miracle in itself, of millions of people. I mean, we can barely handle a few 100,000 at Hajj, and there you got millions and millions, and the way the nation and the people and everything and Mashi and how it comes together. We have the most incredible uniting force, and that is Hussein. And so understanding our community identity, building upon it, I think if we just do that, that will be enough. And then we start to reform, and then we start to change the people around us. And that means that we should be the main influence on other communities, and not that other communities should be influencing us, because we have the greatest knowledge base. We have the Maktab of the Ahlul Bayt. And so the discussion, of course, is a continuous process, but I think that the youth group here is doing a great job of that, and that's how we continue to build. And this generation is the generation that is getting ready for our Imam as well. And there's a reason why we're so connected, because of Imam Hussein and the sacrifices that he made. And his brother, who is but a year older, but passes 10 years before Imam Hussein, at which time his son Qasim ibn al-Hasan is 2 years old when his father passes away. And when it comes time for Karbala, we see him maybe 12 or 13. Very young, and perhaps too young to go out onto this type of a battlefield where there's thousands upon thousands in front of you, and they're going to cheat every time. Every time you're going to send someone out to battle, you will send one out, and they will come one by one, but as they get killed, then they will decide to all attack at once. And this happened again and again in the Battle of Karbala. It is said that on the day of Ashur, the widow of Imam Hasan, the mother of Qasim, she comes up to her son and says that, "You have not gone to the battlefield yet. I thought that you would have gone by now." And he says, "Dear mother, every time I go and ask my uncle for permission to go to the battlefield, he gives me a hug, and then he cries, and then he says that you are the remembrance of my brother Hasan. How can I send you out into that battlefield?" And so he sends me back. It's said that his mother looks at him and she says that, when you were a baby and your father was leaving this world, there was something he had on a piece of paper that he had written. And then he had tied it around your arm, and he had told me that, "Tell Qasim that when the most difficult part of his life comes, then he should open up that letter and it will solve his problem." So it is said that Qasim opens it up and he sees that it is a letter written by his father to his father's brother Imam Hussein. And when he looks at the letter, he sees the letter is asking permission for Qasim to go and fight. So he gets overjoyed. He's overjoyed that my father has given me permission. And he takes that letter to Imam Hussein. When Imam Hussein sees him holding the letter, he takes the letter from him, and as he looks at it, Imam Hussein starts to cry as he looks at the writing of his dear beloved brother. The love between them is very, very difficult to fathom. They were both on the shoulders of the Prophet. They both sat in the lap of the Prophet. They were both the sons of Sayyida and Amir al-Mu'mineen. It is said that when he sees his brother's letter, he hugs Qasim and he says, "Okay, my dear son, your father has given you permission, so get ready to go." It is said that Abu Fadl prepares his student, for he is the one who had taught him to fight. And as he sits him upon the horse and gives him his sword, it is said that he says to him, "Remember what I have taught you." He says, "Dear uncle, I remember everything you have taught me." And then it is said that he is about to go onto the field. Do you know that he went onto the field with a veil over his face? His beauty was such, his mother never let him leave without a veil. It is said that during the battle, when the veil was removed, even the enemies that were hitting him with swords were astounded and commenting upon the beauty of that bright face shining brighter than the moon. It is said that he fought one after the other, and he sent to hell the bravest of them. First one brother, then two, then three, then four, and then their father came onto the field, and then him as well. But it is said that point came where all of them surrounded Qasim ibn al-Hasan, and as they surrounded him, they started to strike him from all sides. This one's martyrdom is so painful. It is said that as the blows struck him and he came from the horse to the ground, as he fell to the ground, it is said that at that point he cried out to Imam Hussein and said, "Oh my dear uncle, help me." Upon hearing his voice, it is said that Abu Fadl and Imam Hussein both charged with their horses, because they knew that everyone who was martyred, they would try to remove his head. And as soon as they saw that they were getting down to remove his head, they charged with full force. When they saw Abu Fadl and Imam Hussein coming with all their might and their strength, they started to flee. But they fled in a way that the ones on the right went to the left and the ones on the left went to the right. It is said that each horse hoof that landed upon the chest of that young warrior would cause him to cry out to his uncle again and again. It is said that by the time Hussein reached his nephew, he could not see him anywhere. He could not find him. He looked for him, and then what he started to see was pieces. And as he looked upon the battlefield, seeing the pieces, he laid out his abba and he started to collect his nephew. It is said that he could not carry him like a body, but rather like a bag upon his shoulder. It is said that as he approached the tents, his sister Zainab bint Ali came out and she said, "The mother is looking for her son. What have you brought? You said you went to get Qasim. I do not see him anywhere." And Imam Hussein pointed to the bundle that he had, and he said, This is my Qasim. فَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ لَا لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ.